Gordon O'Gleish again this morning. Delighted to have with me John Casey, Director of Rosapenna Golf Resort in Northwest Ireland. John, welcome.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Gordon.
My pleasure. I tell you, as I was doing more research on Rosapenna, it really is a terrific story, and a lot of stuff to kind of cover here. But it's been in your family for I think since 1981 when Rosapenna.
That's correct. My parents actually signed the deal to take over the hotel on the 4th of April 1981, so it's almost 40 years in a few weeks' time, but unfortunately, wow. Huge celebrations with the restrictions, but it's 40 years of the Casey family in Rosapenna.
That is terrific. And interestingly, Rosapenna was the first golf resort hotel in the world.
Yeah, that's correct. So the original golf course was laid out by old Tom Morris, who was invited across from Scotland by the local landowner, Lord Leitrim, to lay out a 9-hole course in his private estate, which is about 6 miles from here. But he decided that it made more sense to lay it out on the links land of Rosapenna, and realising what they had kind of achieved and what they were looking at, they decided to build a hotel for the visiting golfers. So the Rosapenna Hotel and Golf Course as such opened for the first time in May 1893. So it's a couple of years back. We celebrated our 125th anniversary. So it's here a long time.
So I mean, when you think about it, I know that you're not exactly in the centre of everything today, which is a good thing in many ways. But you know, in the late 1800s, you were even more remote. I mean, it's intriguing as to why they decided to build a golf resort, a hotel at that stage, which was very cutting edge. I realize it was the landowner's decision, but was there anything that kind of you're aware of that kind of encouraged him to do it, or was just an interest in the game of golf, or he thought it was good? It's just it's not as if it was next door to Dublin or London for the traffic.
Yeah, no, that's really correct. I suppose the nearest railway line came into Derry, which would take me just over an hour to drive right now, but obviously would have took a lot longer back in those days. And the hotel actually had its own private car that used to collect people at the railroad. So I suppose it was a different time. I think a lot of it had to do with Tom Morris and his visit and the suggestion that he gave Lord Leitrim on the strength of the land and the strength of the property. I suppose that what he had laid out, because I know the original plan was a 9-hole golf course, but I think Tom Morris had a lot to do with why they settled with, let's build here and let's develop it as a tourist destination, which is great for everybody since.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, your family predates the acquisition in 81. Did I read where it was actually your grandfather that was a caddy there in the 1940s?
My grandfather worked in the restaurant. He was the restaurant manager, and he worked in the Gresham Hotel, very famous hotel in Dublin, and then he came to work here at Rosapenna. And he worked here until he died. Then shortly after the hotel burned down, he died in 1964. So he died a couple of years later. But he worked there as the head waiter in the restaurant. My father actually began as a young boy, about 11 or 12 years old. He began caddying and then eventually graduated to working within the main hotel.
So your family history has been intertwined for many years with Rosapenna. So actually, having grown up in the west of Scotland, when you talk about 1981, I mean, it's absolutely important that folks understand what a huge leap of faith your parents had in buying Rosapenna in the early 80s, with the troubles in Northern Ireland at that time. And I think I saw it somewhere where the interest rates were up in the low 20% at that time. So, I mean, they took a huge leap of faith in rebuilding Rosapenna and taking it on, and it's been a bit of an evolution. Would that be fair, as you've added a second and soon to be a third course?
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly right. So I suppose when my father started working there in the 50s, and his father had worked there even before that himself, it was always, I suppose it would have been a dream of my father's as a young boy growing up. It would have just been unimaginable that he would have owned the hotel and the golf course. So when the opportunity arose in 1981 and he was kind of involved in a smaller hotel in Milford, he seized it with both hands. And he and my mother talk about interest rates at 23%, which is, it's very difficult to get your head around that you could pay interest rates at that high high up an amount. So it's very strange, but no, that's exactly what happened. So through the years, they spent a lot of money on the hotel and the golf course just gradually as business picked up. And the term of a golf holiday really wasn't that popular in the 80s, but then it became a huge thing, and a lot of people just travelled on holidays and played golf. So a lot of obviously domestic first, and then we started to see a little bit of international business.
So you've now got, as I said, 2, soon to be 3 golf courses. So do you want to talk me through? The first one was designed by old Tom Morris in the late 1800s, and it's been kind of tweaked over the years a little bit. I think you've got some other fine names involved, Varden and Colt.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Tom Morris laid it out for Lord Leitrim originally in the 1890s. And then Lord Leitrim, obviously trying to promote his golf course, used to invite people to come and play some challenge matches. So in 1910, actually, Harry Varden came with George Duncan, Sandy Herden, Tom Ball. Three of those 4 guys actually won Opens. Another, Tom Ball was the runner-up. So they all came and visited, and Harry Varden made some changes. I think it was really length and bunkering, but beyond that, a couple of years later, Harry Colt came. It was 1911 actually, and he extended the golf course into the current back nine, what we know as the Valley Nine. They actually set up a temporary railroad to move some of the land material, some of the dirt. So that's what happened, and they moved right into the back nine and into the kind of real linksy holes. So it's still, a lot of those holes are still here today. So while Tom Morris kind of founded golf at Rosapenna, then it was kind of, improved upon by Varden and Harry Colt.
So then purchased in 81, operating for a while, and then you built the Sandy Hills course in 03 with Pat Ruddy.
That's exactly right. So the back nine of the old course played across a hill. What is the back nine now? The back nines were reversed, and it played over a hill. It wasn't the best ground, and you kind of traversed a road as well in a number of places. So to give us an option not to play that, my father brought in Eddie Hackett in the 90s, and he designed another kind of 8 holes. And that 8 holes then was where Sandy Hills really came from. 3 or 4 of those holes were adopted by Pat Ruddy, and another 13, 14 brand new holes built. So that's where Sandy Hills kind of was born out of, and it opened in 2003. So it's kind of constructed toward the late 90s, early 2000s, and it opened for play in June 2003.
So currently, how does your play kind of move between the 2 courses? Is one kind of busier than the other, or are they equally desirable in terms of the traffic that you see?
Yeah, through the summer we'd see a fairly equal split of traffic, and a little bit more member play on the old links. Both the 9th at the old links comes back to the clubhouse, so that there would probably be the only reason that you'd see a little bit more favoured play on the old links, because some people might like to only play 9 holes or come in after 9, take a break, etc. No, there's a good. The Sandy Hills would be a little bit tougher, but it's very playable, and both courses kind of get an even split of play.
So talk to me a second about your membership. You touched on it there. I'd imagine that part of Ireland there are some characters that you have that are members. Any of them in particular that no names needed, but any folks that particularly stand out as just being very much the quintessential northwest of Ireland local that loves the game of golf?
Yeah, we've a lot of people that play a lot of golf. I suppose they really are. They work in the mornings and they'll play in the afternoons. I can't think of any stories off the top of my head, but there's a lot of really good guys that, as you say, are quintessentially Irish. And golf's different here. It's probably a bit more like Scotland. Golf's different. People, it's kind of a way of life. They enjoy playing golf. It's they just get out and they play. And whether the weather, I said that to somebody this morning about in terms of the lockdown, and they're not allowed to play golf. And you see people that play in January and February, and I mean, the weather that they go out to play golf in, as the old saying goes, they wouldn't go out to get a bag of turf in that sort of weather, but they'll go golfing. It just really shows the kind of commitment and the enjoyment people get out of meeting up and playing golf with their friends. It's
so embedded in the fabric of society. Having grown up in Scotland, you just feel it, and it's so terribly obvious when the Open is on, or in the Irish Open is on. I'm sure the entire country is buzzing about it. If you get into a taxi during the Open or the Irish Open, the taxi driver wants to talk to you about it. I mean, so I understand exactly what you're saying. In terms of the two existing golf courses, because I want to talk about the third one in a minute, any particularly favourite holes that you have from these two courses that come to mind, or a stretch of holes that you enjoy playing?
Yeah, I suppose definitely the back nine where I talked about where Harry Colt got into the valley holes. There's a stretch 12 through 15. You've a kind of a reasonable length par four, then a short four and a long three, and then another kind of shortish four. But they're four holes that you could play in 3-4 over par, 2-3 under par. There's just such a range of scores, and it's a really good stretch, and you kind of get through them, and you have a couple of par fives to finish. But just really, not holes that just stand up and hit driver off the tee, but you can hit driver off the tee if you want to be aggressive. But just real great strategy holes for us to play.
So in terms of the visitors that you see come, obviously pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, a lot of Americans, more Europeans, local Irish travellers. I mean, what's the makeup of your visitors?
Yes, so probably about 50% of our visitors come from the island of Ireland, and then we do about 10 to 15 from mainland UK, and we have about 10 to 15 from Germany, and then the rest we kind of North American, Canadian, a little bit of French, Scandinavian, but not an awful lot. So it's a lot of kind of, I suppose, our outside the Britain and Ireland, a lot of our business would come from Germany and North America.
So you're starting to, are you seeing the North American market growing year on year?
Yeah, we certainly are. Yeah, I think the Open in Portrush, it all really started in Portrush, I think, with the Irish Open back in 2012, and then they got on the Open Rota, and then the Open in Portrush. There's huge buzz about that there, and then obviously our neighbours in Ballyliffin had the Irish Open in 2018, and then just little things like that have just really opened up the Northwest to the US traveller and just given more awareness, and we're just requesting more itineraries. So we're definitely seeing more North American traffic.
Now, you mentioned Ballyliffin. Events that you've hosted at Rosapenna over the years, national events or regional events. I mean, one of the challenges is that Rosapenna probably is certainly not as well known as it should be, but it's known well within Ireland. But what have you had you've hosted over the years that would give you some profile in Ireland?
So we've hosted a number of fairly large amateur events. We've worked quite well with what was formerly the GUI, now known as Golf Ireland, and we've hosted their close championship, so their top level amateur tournament for players born in the island of Ireland. We also had the ladies version about 5 or 6 years ago. We had their interprovincial tournament where they split the country into 4 and each province plays against each other. And then we also ran our own Scratch Cup. Scratch Cups are historically they were very popular in Ireland in the 90s, and we kind of have run one for the last 15, 20 years, but we were very fortunate that Rory McIlroy came to play in it twice. He won it on the first occasion in 2005, and then he played again in 2007, a couple of weeks before he turned pro and had this strong finish at the Dunhill and got his card. And Shane Lowry actually played in that a few times as well. So very fortunate that we had those great players come and see Rosapenna when they were still had amateur status. And so we've had those amateur tournaments, and then we look forward to this year hosting the Irish Legends event, which is a European Senior Tour event, and it's been hosted by Paul McGinley, who has huge ties to the area.
So I was going to ask you about notable players who've played your courses over the years, and obviously you got a fairly strong start there with Rory and Shane Lowry. Any other names that come to mind that you've celebrities or noted professionals that have passed through?
Yeah, well, Paul McGinley obviously has played quite a bit. He's the connection. We're very fortunate that Graham McDowell visited the golf course 5 weeks after he won the US Open at Pebble Beach. He came with a friend, my brother Frank, and played with him. So it's a fantastic experience. We actually got to know Graham quite well. So really nice guy. And funny you'd actually say celebrities. We have an event here every year. It's a father and son event by some people from Northern Ireland. We know them all very well, but Jamie Dornan plays every year, and he gets an awful lot of press and an awful lot of publicity from some of his movie career when he comes to play. So even though we've had some very famous golfers played here, I think Jamie Dornan being here gets the most social media views.
That's terrific. Now we've talked about the two courses, and obviously the project has taken up a lot of time here and is opening this coming year. Which and just from a business standpoint, I have to believe it's going to probably have the potentially single biggest impact on Rosapenna coming from the US market is Tom Doak's golf course, St Patrick's, which is scheduled to open in 2021. Now, do you want to kind of give a little bit of background as to how you acquired the land that the golf course is on and how that came to pass?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, and St Patrick's kind of was born in the 90s as a 36-hole facility developed by a local hotelier. So he originally planned to build 18 holes and was building that with Eddie Hackett, and then he decided he'd add a second 18, and he got the assistant pro at the time, Joanne O'Hare, to design the second course. It was the only course at the time in Ireland, possibly still, that was designed by a lady. So unfortunately, both golf courses are very, very good, but as we move forward, the project was bought by a local developer who brought in Jack Nicklaus, and that's sorry where I say unfortunately, that ran into financial difficulty. So Jack Nicklaus's project was supposed to be a 36-hole course as well. It's only a 300-acre site, and I know that's plenty of space for 36 holes, but it kind of takes away from, I suppose, what makes the holes unique in terms of the scale of the site. So Jack Nicklaus' project, it didn't last very long and it went bankrupt, and the project moved into, or the piece of property moved into NAMA, which was it was for toxic acids in Ireland. So essentially we bought the land off NAMA in November 2012, and we'd had a previous association with Tom. We did a little bit of work on our front line of our old course. So we kind of sat on it for a number of years, not really sure what way to move forward. And we eventually always kind of wanted to work with Tom, and really that was what we wanted to do. And Tom came to us with a proposal whereby we partnered with him, and we broke ground in June 2018. Really, we did some preliminary works, but it all kind of kicked off in July 19, and construction was underway for around 18 months. And now it's just getting ready, growing in, and it'll be hopefully ready to go this summer.
So how much were the lockdown restrictions this past year? How much did they impact the construction?
They didn't have a huge impact in terms of, we were working last March, and some of the American guys that were here unfortunately had to leave, but they got back in the autumn and everything just moved on quite quickly. A lot of the work was done in the kind of autumn fall season of 2019, so there wasn't an awful lot to do to finish the golf course this year. So we're quite pleased. So really, COVID hasn't had a huge effect on the progress of the golf course.
So it's currently in kind of final growing stage?
Yeah, exactly. That's where we are now. Just growing, a little bit of tidying up here and there, but it's looking very good.
And your target date to open is when?
Toward the end of June.
Okay.
Toward the last week of June. So obviously restriction, pending, etc. But toward the end of June.
So how much do you think that's going to impact Rosapenna and help you put yourselves on even farther on the golf map? And where do you think that golf course? Obviously, you've got two that are you enjoy just now, but you've now got you'll have a name, a well-known course just with the architect that's very prominent. How do you think that's going to kind of fit into your list of courses with visitors?
Definitely, I think St Patrick's is going to just have a huge impact on golf in the entire region, the entire northwest of Ireland, even Ireland. I think it's a special golf course. It's a special piece of ground. As I said, it's 300 acres. So Tom's been able to lay out a golf course of tremendous scale. It really is an impressive piece. It's an impressive layout, and their attention to detail, greens and bunkering, etc. It's just I think it's difficult to say it kind of subjectively, but I think it's a fantastic golf course. I think that it'll have a huge impact. I think that people will come because they want to see it and because Tom Doak's name's on it, but I think people will want to come back because it's just an enjoyable, fun golf course, on a beautiful piece of ground with other great golf courses nearby, and a hotel and village and real traditional Irish. Donegal's still kind of that traditional Irish feeling, with the old pubs, turf fires. So I think it'll just have a huge impact, and I think it'll just really help this part of the world.
It's fun. It's funny you say that, because we just launched a program called the Authentic Collection, and it really is intended to introduce people to places and golf courses that maybe aren't always on the first tier list. if you will, and the way that you describe Rosapenna and the experience there. I mean, Rosapenna is very much part of that, what I would describe as the authentic Ireland. So it's terrific that you've taken, you know, what exists just now with two fine golf courses, and then you've added a third into it. Now, I'm sure you've walked the golf course many times and imagined the holes maturing on Tom Doak's golf course. Do you have any in particular that you're particularly excited about seeing them evolve and mature, that will be the signature holes, for want of a better word, that will be the best holes out there?
I've been fortunate enough. Well, I've played it a number of times, many times really, in the end of last year. But there's a couple of great stretches in the front nine and the back nine. But they're really, that's the thing about Tom's golf course, is that there's no signature. You know, he really tries to create 18 fantastic golf holes, and I think that's what we have. So I really think there's parts of the course where you'll see more of the sea than others, but there's an awful lot of golf holes that you see the ocean. So I think that it's really well balanced. You know, the front nine, the back nine, you see the water, and you have stretches that are closer to the water in both. But in terms of balance in the golf course, it's very, very enjoyable to play. You know, there's good wide fairways, which is something that you don't see all too often on modern links courses. You know, just wide, generous fairways and you know, large greens that, you know, they're going to be trickier to put on, but they're definitely going to, you know, you're going to get there and you're going to find your golf ball, really is the key. So that's what we're, you know, happy with.
Yep, finding your golf ball is kind of important. I've been fortunate to play in a couple of Tom's Renaissance Cups over the years. Last one been down at Tara-Iti in New Zealand. So hopefully maybe this is a shameless plug for him to have the Renaissance Cup at St. Patrick's one of these years, because it gets you some great profile. But tell you what, looking forward to getting to Rosapenna, hopefully when the pandemic clears and the world gets back to normal. It has been a pleasure chatting with you this morning. Obviously, on the hotel side of things, when you add a new golf course, you're in charge of the hotel operations, am I right?
I'm based kind of between both the golf and the hotel, but I probably spend more of my time in the hotel, yeah.
So when you add a new golf course, you're expecting kind of your average stay to last that little bit longer? The guests, instead of 2 or 3 nights, to add a night to it, hopefully?
Exactly. I think we'll see probably more of that, and maybe in the post-COVID world where people are kind of keener to stay that little bit longer in the one destination. You know, there's obviously some fantastic other golf courses in Donegal. You have the new work at Nairn and Portneuf with Gil Hans, and you obviously have neighbouring Port Salmon and Ballyliffin. So there's absolutely, you know, no reason not to stay that little bit longer, move around the county and see everything that's on offer.
Yeah, the northwest of Ireland is really terrific, and it's unfortunately overlooked by a lot of the North American market. But obviously, with, you know, when the likes of Gil Hans and Tom Doak add a lot of profile and credibility to the golf experience, and then there's the authentic portion that we just kind of spoke about. So it's exciting times. I know it's been a challenging 2021, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I just want to wish you and your family the very best for this coming year and the new golf course and all the hard work that the Casey family have put into Rosapenna over the years. So thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. We look forward to welcoming you here to play the golf courses and see everyone.
Thank you. Take care now.
Thank you.